Hi, welcome to the Pacific Northwest Wrestling Officials Association Spring Apprentice Training. This session is focused on Introduction to Officiating. This is the first of two sessions you'll receive in preparation for the upcoming middle school season. And this Spring Apprentice program is actually very important to our association because it gives an opportunity for new referees to join us after the high school season ends. And this is especially important for high school wrestlers because now they have the opportunity to officiate outside of when they're actually wrestling themselves. So there's a full agenda. I'll walk you through real quick what we're going to cover in this first session. And this first session will take a little over an hour. First, I'll give you an introduction of myself, who your trainer is here, Bob Turner. That's me. Second, I'll cover expectations I have for those who participate in officiating. Third, I'll talk about the role of the official. Next, we'll go into some of the organizations that matter when it comes to officiating here in the state of Washington and for the PNWOA. Next, I'll cover assignments and how that works and how you get your assignments. We'll talk about pay. That's really important. One of the reasons most of you want to officiate is because you want to have a chance to make some money, and I'll explain what the money is and how you get it. Next, I'll cover the requirements for uniforms for officials. We'll talk about the publications that guide the sport and that you'll need to have. I'll share some principles of officiating with you. Then we'll transition from some of this sort of big picture stuff that I'm talking about early in this session, and we'll start narrowing down to more specific things, starting with some of the key rules that you'll need to know. So first we'll talk about supporting points, then we'll talk about the inbounds and out of bounds rule. And then lastly, at the end of the session, I'll cover some of the things that you need to be able to do prior to when your dual meet begins. So here we go. Meet your trainer. That's me. I'm Bob Turner. I'm the assigner for the Pacific Northwest Wrestling Officials Association, PNWOA. As a high schooler, middle schooler, high schooler, I wrestled as well as in college. So I was your 1979 AAA state champion at 101 pounds from Bellarmine Prep High School here in Tacoma. That's me right there, the guy with the long hair. I think that's the last time I had hair that long, and that was 41 years ago. I also wrestled in college. I'm a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. So I graduated there in 1983. I was a four-time varsity letterman there. Also a three-time place winner at the Eastern Intercollegiate Wrestling Association, EIWA tournament, and also a two-time NCAA Division I qualifier. Pictured there is me wrestling against my opponent from Lehigh University, Bobby Weaver, as well as a picture from a podium that I'm really proud of, which is the 1981 EIWA championship. The reason I show that picture, I was there. I only placed sixth that year. That was my sophomore year, but I'm very proud to be standing on that podium because here in first place is Gene Mills of Syracuse University. He's a two-time NCAA champion, also was on the 1980 Olympic team that boycotted the Olympics because they were supposed to be held in Moscow, so he didn't actually get to compete that year. And he's also the inventor of the high half. So that's a very common move nowadays, but when I was wrestling back in high school and college, that was a revolutionary thing that he introduced to the sport, and he pinned a lot of guys in the NCAAs. He was a four-time All-American, but he broke the rules because we were trained that you never, ever throw a half Nelson unless you had your opponent broken down, and he was the guy that started throwing that half when someone was on their knees, and he could turn guys like nobody's business. He's also in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Here in second place is Bobby Weaver of Lehigh University. Bobby was on 3 Olympic teams, and he was the 1984 Olympic gold medalist in freestyle wrestling. He also took third place at the 1982 NCAA tournament. So he's in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame as well. So as you can see, like, that's just my league tournament. I mean, these two legends are on the podium, and that's just our league tournament to try to get to the NCAAs. Only the top three in the EIWA advanced. So that was quite a remarkable field we had that year. I've been officiating the sport of wrestling now for 30 years. That's me pictured there at the what we call the Matt Classic state wrestling tournament that happens at the Tacoma Dome every season. And I've officiated 13 state tournaments in my career. I've also trained over 250 people to officiate the sport of wrestling. And the sport of wrestling is actually probably the most complex sport to teach someone how to officiate due to the nature of the fact that generally, like 98% of the time, you are working all by yourself. You're not on a crew like in other sports such as football or soccer or basketball. I've been in my role for 12 years now as the trainer and the assigner for PNWOA. And so I do have quite a bit of experience now training people to officiate. And four of the people I've recruited and trained actually have risen to the level of officiating at the state tournament as well. So I'm very proud of that. I also have 3 rules in the National Rules Book that I authored. So, you'll see the publications shortly here that we're going to be using. And then lastly, and this is sort of obscured, I think, by the video of my face, but I also coached for 5 years. That's a picture of my team there at my alma mater, Bellarmine Prep, where I went to high school. And in the 5 years I was coaching, we had 17 qualifiers to the state tournament, and we put 5 guys on the podium that placed there at the state tournament. So I'm very proud of that. So all of this is just to say, hey, yay me. No, not really. But just to say, not that I'm like bragging on myself. I just want to let you know that I'm very credentialed in the sport of wrestling, and I've been involved with the sport now for almost 50 years. So you hopefully you can trust what I'm sharing with you as I take you through these training sessions. So now let me share expectations I have for anyone that's entering into officiating, but specifically in this instance for the people that are entering into the spring apprentice program. We have in preparation for the high school season, we have our regular apprentice program. And during the spring, because we want to give the opportunity for high school wrestlers to be able to become wrestling officials, we modify the normal training program that we offer. So here are the expectations I have. First, the goal of these sessions for spring apprentices is not that you become an expert and that you're ready to officiate the state tournament at the end of these 2 sessions I'm going to give you. No, the goal is for you to become an adequate or sufficient official. So the schools that we officiate, we're in a pretty good partnership with them. The coaches are very supportive of this program. They realize that in many cases I'm sending out people that are high school aged and they're not, super experienced in officiating. So they don't have the expectation of you that they would have of me in my role, having been involved with officiating for a few decades. So my goal is just to make sure that you're prepared and you can handle the job. And then over time, if you stay with it, you will become more expert. This is just a reminder, right? This is a job. And if you're not reliable, if you show me that you can't be relied upon, I'll fire you. Now, in the dozen years I've been running this program, I've only had to do that one time. Okay. I had one kid who went through the training, got his first assignment, was supposed to go do a middle school dual meet that was supposed to start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At 4:05 that afternoon, I get a call from a coach who says, "Hey, where's my official?" And I said, "Oh, well, let me figure out what's going on." So I go look up to see who's supposed to be at that school. I start calling. I call the kid's cell phone number a few times, no answer. Uh, After about the 4th time I tried calling him, I get a text message from him saying, "Oh, I'm not going to be there." That was the last time that he did anything for us because I can't put up with that. He let those kids down at that school. They had no official that afternoon. He wasn't responsible in the least, didn't notify me in advance that he either couldn't be there, or in this case, he just didn't want to be there. So I let him go. So anyway, that's just one time out of the 12 years I've been doing this. It's not really an issue, but I do want to remind everyone, I need you to be reliable. If you're supposed to be somewhere, if you've accepted an assignment, you need to live up to that, okay? Third thing, and this is just a reassurance for you, right, is that if you wrestled, then you know probably 80% of what you need to know in order to officiate wrestling. Um, you know what a takedown looks like. You know what a pin is. You know what some of these illegal holds are already. You know how long the periods are, how long a match is. So you know a lot of this already. Um, it's that 20% of the stuff that you don't know that the official needs to know that you as a competitor didn't have to know. So, for instance, if you're in the middle of wrestling and the fire alarm goes off, then what? Weigh-in's supposed to start at 5 o'clock and the other team's not there yet. What do you do? Like, as a wrestler, you don't know and you don't really need to know, but as an official, those are the things you need to know. And so that's that 20% that you don't know yet. Um, but without even going through the training, you by and large just kind of understand the sport and are ready to officiate it. This point I want to make is that every match matters. Every one of those competitors out there is somebody's son or daughter, somebody's best friend, somebody's teammate, somebody's classmate. So guess what? That match matters to them and the people that care about them. And I don't care if it's the brand newest JV middle schooler or I have 2 state finalists. The match is important. And because it matters to them, it matters to me. And I'm going to give them my all. And I'm never going to look at any competitors and say, oh, they're no good or they're inexperienced or this is a terrible league or any. No, never, never, ever. Do not entertain those thoughts. What you want to do is every time you are about to start a match, you're thinking this match is just as important as the state championship final, okay? Treat it that way because those kids deserve that. Their coaches and their fans and their teammates deserve that from you, okay? Next point is this role that you're taking on, especially if you're in high school, this gives you a lot of responsibility. So you need to be ready to handle that responsibility. You actually will have authority over people that like me, old guys. So you may only be 16, 17 years old, and suddenly you're in a position you might have to kick out of the gym, eject some guy that's 55 years old or 60 years old. But that's what your role is, and you have to play that role. So um, it could be that the person in the corner is your old middle school coach or your club coach or something, but you still have responsibility for that event and potentially have authority over them, even though they're your elders. So just be ready for that responsibility, as well as the responsibility of the fact that the match, is dependent upon your judgment and your rulings. So everything you do is sort of consequential out there. Okay. All right. And then the last point here, this is fun. Officiating wrestling is fun. The sport is fun. Make it fun. So it's a serious responsibility, and I want you to do a good job. But I also want you to have fun. Like, this is a great opportunity to see the sport from a different angle. If you're still a wrestler, it actually will help your wrestling to understand the rules and understand officiating better. But it's just a lot of fun to see young people compete, see them achieve things, see them to grow and learn, and be a part of that. So let's talk about the role of the official now, keeping with this sort of big picture stuff, and we'll work our way down to more sort of specific, practical, hands-on things for you. So a referee plays 5 main roles. The first and most important is you administer the contest. You're the one that has to make sure that the event is run according to the rules. And because we have referees, that means the sport matters. So I always sort of use this as an example, but how many of you know who won the pickup basketball game down at the elementary school in your neighborhood yesterday afternoon at 3 o'clock? You know what? None of you do. And you know why? Because there's no referees, there were no uniforms, there's no standings. Like it doesn't really count, it doesn't really matter to anyone. But when we assign referees and we pay them to officiate our contests, guess what? That matters. So in your role, you get paid to administer the contest, okay? Second, and maybe the most equally important thing is that you're there to protect the wrestlers. So safety is an important consideration. And we want these wrestlers to walk off the mat the same way they walked on. So you're in a role that you have to make sure that when somebody's in jeopardy, you stop that action, right? Or you penalize accordingly. And I don't want you, if you're new to officiating, to ever sort of judge whether or not, oh, he's faking it. You know what? If the wrestler cries out, if they say they can't breathe, even though their opponent is wrapped around their ankle and the person standing on their feet, if they say they can't breathe, you know what? Blow the whistle and call injury timeout, because I don't want you in a position where you're taking a chance with someone's safety. If you think they're hurt, if you think something doesn't look safe, just stop it. I'd rather have you stop something too early or inappropriately because you were most interested in protecting someone versus thinking, well, he's about to score that near fall. Maybe I should wait. Don't think that way. Just safety first. Okay. So that's your second rule. Protect those wrestlers. Third rule, you're responsible for all rulings and judgments. Now, the rule book actually has a rule that defines this for you and tells you you have that responsibility. So your ruling is final, which is the reason why you need to be knowledgeable about the rules and how to apply them and how to interpret them, because you're the Supreme Court on that mat. You know, if you say it is so and they can't show you otherwise in the rule book, then your ruling stands, okay? And because, again, the match matters, we want to get it right. So if you're in that position that you're the ultimate one that has to make that decision, we want your decision to be a good one. Next is you're a role model. Whether you think you are or not, you are, um, because you're dressed in a way that everybody in the gym will recognize you. You're the only one dressed that way. Okay, you're going to be wearing a gray pinstripe shirt. You're going to be wearing black pants. You're going to have a whistle around your neck. You're the only one. So just like this little person in the middle, the red person in the middle of all those blue, you will be noticeable. How many people are there on a wrestling mat once a competition begins? What's the most number of people? 3, right? You, the referee, and 2 wrestlers. Sometimes, you know what? How many people are left on that mat? 1. I shake their hand. They shake hands. I raise somebody's hand. They go back to their corner. How many people are standing on the mat now? 1. Me. So people see you. That mat's in the center of the gym. Everybody's looking at it. So they're looking at you. So just be cognizant of that and make sure you're setting the right example, okay? And if you're in high school and you're officiating middle school stuff, then that means don't be clowning around with the kids and acting like a fool. Stay in your role, right? Um, especially if, hey, that's your little brother on that team over there, or your teammate's little sister or whatever's on that team. Like, do not fall into that trap. Stay in your role, be professional, and be a good role model, okay? And then the last point I want to raise is that you're a steward of the sport. You're part of passing on this sport to others. So all of us that have competed in the sport of wrestling, other people came before us and they passed that sport on to us. Our coaches, the referees, they did that for us. So I bring like 70 years of uninterrupted wrestling history into this situation, right? My high school coach who competed in the sport in back in 1950s, right? And then they coached me in the 1970s, and then I started officiating in 1989, right? And now here we are in the year 2020. Like there's like 70 years of wrestling history sort of that I bring with me. Now, if I train you and you stay with the sport for the next 30 years or so, when you're talking to people 30 years from now, you're going to be bringing like 100 years of wrestling history with you. Okay. So we're passing this sport on to others. We love this sport. That's why we do what we do. That's why you compete. That's why we officiate, because we love the sport and we're just trying to pass that on. So I just want to emphasize that to you. You are a steward of the sport. So let me share with you some of the organizations that matter in regards to officiating. So here in the state of Washington, the WIAA, the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, that's the body that represents all of the schools, and they sanction all of these sports and all these activities. So the sport of wrestling, sports like football, baseball, cross country, etc., as well as activities like debate, all-state band, cheer. There's a variety of things, but the WIA is basically our the organization that represents our customer, who are the schools and their competitors. Then this blue and red shield, the NFHS, is the National Federation of High Schools. This is the governing body at a national level for all sports. So they are the ones that publish and maintain all of the rules for all sports, not just wrestling, football, basketball, volleyball, etc. Third is the Washington Officials Association, the WOA. This is the counterpart organization to the WIA in our state. So the WIA represents the schools, WOA represents the officials. And so they oversee all officials across the state. And as a governing body, they are our main liaison to the schools through the WIAA. Now, the WOA represents, again, all sports and all geographies within our state. So really just as a point of understanding, what happens is there are individual sports, football, basketball, wrestling, baseball, and then there are individual geographies which cut across that. So for us, King County, Pierce County, Snohomish County. So every of one of the officials associations like ours, Pacific Northwest Officials Association, is the intersection of a sport and a geography. We are wrestling King County primarily. Okay. And then there is finally us, the Pacific Northwest Wrestling Officials Association. We do we are the home for all of the wrestling officials in the King County area, and we are a member organization of the WOA, which means there are certain things that we have to comply with and fulfill that the WOA dictates to us in order for us to be able to officiate the sport. So let's talk about the jurisdiction of the PNWOA. As you can see from this little graphic, we do operate primarily in King County. So if you see sort of the little dotted line there, we don't cover all of King County. We cover everything basically north of Federal Way. So the Kent area and Maple Valley and the Renton area, Des Moines, Burien, those are our southernmost points. And then we cover all of the rest of the King County from West Seattle all the way over to North Bend in the mountains, and then all the way to the northern boundary of King County, and even a little beyond. We have a few schools, 4 schools, high schools anyway, that are within Snohomish County that we cover. So we provide wrestling officials for 100 different schools, and we are the largest Wrestling Officials Association in the state. So we have 53 high schools in our geography, as well as 47 middle schools. And the thing that I want to just highlight is that those 47 middle schools, that's what gives us this opportunity to allow spring apprentices to come on, because we have six different middle school leagues that are beginning competition here in the month of February after the high school season ends. So we're fortunate in that regard that we're so large and we have all of those middle schools and all of those middle school leagues, and that they start after the high school season. Because in some of these other geographies, like down in Pierce County, the Western Washington Wrestling Officials Association, that's their geography. I think almost all of their middle schools wrestle during the high school season. So they don't have the same opportunity that they can offer to the high school wrestlers that we do here in PNWA. So let me give you just a quick snapshot on the WOA. The central hub is located in a tool called Arbiter, and I'll explain Arbiter a little bit in more detail in the subsequent slide that we get into. But this is sort of the home page for the WOA, is that WOA central hub in the Arbiter system. The WOA helps provide labor and industries L&I coverage for any of the WIAA sanctioned events. So if we're working a dual meet or tournament that's a WIAA sanctioned event at a WIAA member school, then that means we get coverage from L&I. So for instance, if you get injured, they can help with your health care coverage to help offset that. So if some 285-pound wrestler lands on top of me and breaks my ankle, L&I is there to help me out if I need any medical treatments and assistance. Okay. The WA also has a unique partnership with another organization, a national organization called the NASO, which is the National Association of Sports Officials. NASO is the short way we refer to them. But that partnership with NASO, and again, NASO represents all sports across the nation. That partnership gives us some liability insurance coverage so that in our role, let's say somebody wants to sue because they're not happy about the way the match ended, or because somebody got hurt and then they want to come after somebody and say, gee, the official, it's your fault because you should have stopped that hold earlier. Then if that was to ever happen, NASO provides us with all of the legal coverage up to like $3.5 million. So in my 30 years, I've never had an experience or known anybody personally that ever had to sort of go to court or worry about that stuff. But the reality is I do hear these sort of horror stories sometimes from other states in other sports where this is something that has happened. And thanks to an organization like NASO, the official is protected, so they don't have to worry about going broke trying to defend themselves in court, or in the case that somebody's trying to dig into their wallet to get compensated because of something that happened in an event that you were officiating. So that's a reassurance. Now, that partnership with NASO comes with a cost. Each of us as officials, we get charged $65 annually for that coverage, and you'll have that coverage too. Now, I'll explain about getting certified as a WA official in just a moment, but if you complete your certification successfully, then PNWA will cover that $65 fee for you. And that's significant because $65 is basically the equivalent almost of doing one event on an afternoon, like doing a middle school dual meet. So get those WA certification requirements done, and then we'll cover that for you. If you don't get your certification, I'm just going to emphasize this will come out of your paycheck, okay? Now, let's talk about certifying. Only certified officials can officiate high school level competitions in the state of Washington. There's sort of two levels of officials in the eyes of the WA. One is what they call a registered official, which simply means that you are a member of the WA and that you have you know, registered to be on their rolls. Certified officials have to pass all of their training as well as pass a rules test. So what does the certification look like? Well, there's a handful of things that on the WOA Central Hub, when you get your Arbiter account, you'll be able to go in there and complete these things. But they want to do a background check on everybody. So they're trying to make sure that we don't have, felons on mats working with, middle school and high school age kids, right? So they do a background check. And then there's an online concussion clinic to familiarize you with how to recognize signs and symptoms of a concussion and what you as a referee are responsible for doing in reaction to that. There's just a couple of welcome videos from the WIAA and the WOA. Okay, so they're just really brief videos that just say, "Hey, welcome to this season." Nothing heavy in terms of content there, just to get you familiar with those organizations and the people that are running them. There's a clinic, an online clinic from the National Federation of High School Rules, covering all the rule changes for the year. So it doesn't cover all of the rules in the rule book. It just covers the narrow slice of things that have changed for this upcoming season. So it's usually anywhere from an 8 to 20-minute long video, depending on how many rule changes there are, to cover those rule changes. And then lastly, there's a test, the NFHS rules test. The test does cover all of the rule book, but the test consists of 40 questions, okay? And you have to score 70% or higher on the test in order to get your certification. I will send you in advance of the next training session what's called a wrestling study guide. The wrestling study guide has 50 questions on it, of which that's the entire universe of all the questions that would appear on the test. And the WA, when they give you the test and the test is given online, it will select 40 questions off of the study guide. So you'll have every single question that you could possibly be asked. And out of those 50, you'll get 40 of them on your test. Now, your test and my test won't be exactly the same. We may not get the same 40. And also, when they administer the test or present it to you, even if we, let's say, by random chance got the same 40 questions, they wouldn't necessarily appear in the same order either. So anyway, you'll get that study guide, and that study guide I'll give you has the answers highlighted. So you'll be prepared for that test. Just to put it to you plainly, right? Like if you already have all the questions that could be on the test and you know the answer to each question, then is there really any reason why you can't get 70% on a test that you'll take online at home all by yourself? So anyway, just be on the lookout, and you'll get all the preparation you need to get your certification done. And you'll need to get your certification done no later than February 19th. I won't allow people to go on to training session number 2 unless they've completed the requirements, this WA certification requirements, by February 19th. When you become a member of the WOA, then you get a membership card, and then that membership card gives you access to all of the WIAA state championship events for free. And that's quite a bargain. For instance, an all sessions pass to Mat Classic at the Tacoma Dome, I believe, is about $21. So if you have a WOA membership card, you can go to that state tournament for free. You just show them your membership card and then your ID, and they let you in for free. And so I've used that pass to go to things like the state track and field championships. My oldest daughter was in cheer, and so I went to the state cheer championships 3 times. I had son that was in all-state band, went to the all-state band event for free. I had son that was in all-state choir, same thing. So all of those things free because you're a WA member. And then lastly, your dues for the WOA are $30 a year. So we all have to pay $30 to the WOA on top of the $65 that also goes towards the NASO coverage. So for me personally, like I'm paying $95 a year to the WOA to be a member and be able to officiate. But like I said, if you pass your certification requirements by February 19th, we'll take care of the $65 portion of your fee. The $30 in annual dues, we will deduct that out of your paycheck at the end of the season. Okay, so you don't have to write any checks to anybody to pay for any of this stuff. Anything's, if I ever talk about a cost for something, it'll be deducted from your paycheck. So let's talk about how assignments work. Like I mentioned, Arbiter is the tool that we use. It is an internet-based tool. You'll be given an account. The account is based off of your email address. The tool is very user-friendly. Like if you know how to change the settings on your cell phone so you have a different wallpaper or your certain icons to appear on certain your home screen, like it, if you can do stuff like that, you can use Arbiter. You don't need a big instruction guide. It's pretty straightforward, okay? Um, but that's the tool that you will have an account, and all of your assignments for any of the events, whether they're dual meets or tournaments that you'll work, will appear in that tool. And then that tool will also accumulate all the things in regards to your earnings so that you can see what events are on your schedule, which ones you've completed, and how much you're getting paid in fees for those events, okay? So once you have your account, then I need you to log in often because that's, again, where you get your assignments. Now, the communications mode that you need to be in is, for me and PNWA, email is your primary form of communication. We'll use the phone by exception. So just to help you understand, in my role as the assigner, I'm dealing with 70 different officials every season, and I'm dealing with about 600 or 700 officiating assignments that I have to give out to those people. If I have to call people every time to talk to them about stuff, this job wouldn't be doable. I wouldn't be able to have a regular job. So the system, though, Arbiter, will spin off emails to you when I make an assignment. It'll give you email reminders to tell you, hey, you have an assignment tomorrow at this school. So email is the primary communication. Now, if you're a high schooler or even a young adult, the chances are I'm going to bet like email is not sort of in your normal wheelhouse of something that you're checking and monitoring constantly, right? So I get it. You'd probably operate off your cell phone, mostly your smartphone. But guess what? If you're going to officiate for me, you need to be in email and you got to watch your email system, okay? So if you don't like using email as your primary thing, too bad, I guess. If you want to officiate and during the officiating season, be looking at your email all the time, okay? And then, like I said, by exception, we'll use the phone, and I'll explain when that comes into play, okay? In Arbiter, you can put blocks on your schedule to indicate that you're not available. Now, I didn't say this earlier in the training, but I'm going to say it right now, is like, if you can't commit to being available during the dates when all these competitions are taking place, like the majority of the dates that are out there, like then don't bother being part of this, okay? Like if you want to run track or you're taking driver's ed or you're doing freestyle wrestling practices in the afternoon instead, and you tell me, well, I can't take this assignment or that assignment, I'm busy that day. If you can't work, then then this isn't for you. Like I need people who are available, but everybody has certain things, whether it's stuff from my job or family, or if you're in school still, if you have a field trip or something like that, then sure, just put your block in Arbiter, and that'll allow me in my role when I'm trying to assign it things to people to know you're not an option. Okay, so you have the ability to do that. Now, when you get sent an assignment, I need you to either accept it or decline it expeditiously. And when I say expeditiously, I'm gonna use the time frame 24 hours. So based on what you know when you get the assignment, if you say, well, it looks like I'm available that day and I do want to work it, accept it. Just click accept and that you're good to go. If based off what you know, it's like, oh, you know what, I have a field trip on you're assigning me to something on March 6th. We have a field trip that day. We don't get back till 4. You know what? Fine, go ahead and decline it. Um, but do not sit on an assignment and fail to notify me. Like the longer this goes on, the more nervous I get as to whether or not you're actually available, like you're actually going to fulfill the assignment. So I don't want you getting an assignment sent to you on February 26th for an event that takes place on March 5th, and then March 4th at midnight, you're contacting me to say, "Oh yeah, I decline." That doesn't work, right? So you get the assignment on February 26th, like by the next day, February 27th, just let me know that you can or you can't do it, okay? Because if you don't let me know, then if I look at it and it hasn't been accepted yet, I'm just getting nervous. Are you going to do it or not do it? Like I send you the assignment because I want you to have the opportunity to officiate. I want you to have the opportunity to make the money. So just let me know, give me the respect, and help me in my role by being sort of expeditious in looking at those assignments and accepting them or letting me know that hey Bob, go look for someone else instead. Okay. All right. Enough said on that. The next thing is in the tool, if you accept an assignment, actually, you don't have the power to unaccept it after the fact. So if you've, let's say in my example, February 26th, I send you an assignment for March 5th, you accept it because everything's all clear, and then you find out on, March 2nd that, oh, your teacher has a required after school thing, you have to be there if you want to pass the course or whatever, and now you need to get out of the assignment, just let me know. Now, give me as much lead time as possible. So again, if you're learning on March 2nd that the event you're scheduled to on March 6th you can't go to, let me know on March 2nd. Don't wait again until the morning of March 6th and go, oh, by the way, Bob, my teacher scheduled a field trip that we all have to go on after school. Like that isn't going to work. So um, give me as much lead time as possible so I can go find a replacement for you. Okay. I can take you off the assignment. I'm the only one that can do that. You can't do it for yourself, but I can take you off it, and then I can go find somebody else to put in that thing, okay? Now, if this happens less than 48 hours before the event, that's when I want you to phone me. So prior to that, you can text me or you can email me, but if we're within 48 hours, so March 6th is arriving and here on March 5th, you go home after school and you're running a 104-degree fever and you're worried, like, you know what? Email me or not email me, but contact me, text me or phone me at that point and say, Bob, I'm really sick. I think I have the flu. I don't think I can be at XYZ middle school tomorrow afternoon. And then I'll just jump into action and get somebody, okay? That stuff happens. If something happens on short fuse, we'll deal with it. But the more lead time I have in my role, the easier it is for me to find a replacement, okay? Now, when you're in Arbiter, you'll see a start time for your events. And what that start time represents is the time that you're expected to be on site at the school in uniform, ready to perform your duties. Now, for a middle school dual meet, that start time represents a time period 15 minutes before the start of the wrestling action. That's enough time so you can do some pre-meet checks before the wrestling starts, because with the middle schools, we don't weigh them in. So you don't have a lot of duties to worry about before the wrestling starts. If you're on a tournament crew and you're going to do weigh-ins, and we do the weigh-ins in some middle school tournaments, then that time is usually 2 hours prior to the start of wrestling, because that's when the weigh-ins usually start. And so if you're on the weigh-in crew, fine, you'll be there early. You'll get paid extra if you're on the weigh-in crew to compensate you for your time and the effort that you have to go through to conduct weigh-in. And then for everyone else on the crew, you'll need to be there 30 minutes before the start of wrestling. So if you don't have to do the weigh-ins, you just show up 30 minutes before the wrestling starts. Okay. And then do yourself a favor, call your school and confirm your assignment, the details, okay? Email them, call them, whatever. Uh, Contact them no later than the morning of your event. So again, if you're scheduled on March 6th, no later than like before you head to school, if you're going to school on March 6th, 8 a.m. or something, 7:30, like be sending an email or calling the school just to confirm, hey, I'm scheduled to be at North Shore Middle School for your wrestling dual meet that starts at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I'm your referee. Just want to confirm that it's today at 4 p.m. If it's not, if there's any change to that, please contact me at, and then just give them your cell phone number, and that way they can get a hold of you if something's changed. What we're trying to avoid is I don't want you to show up at a school and then find out, oh yeah, there's no wrestling meet today. Today was the all school band concert, and they used the gym instead, and that wrestling thing got rescheduled to next Friday. So that will happen if you don't contact the school in advance. So contact them in advance. That's sort of your safety net so that you don't end up wasting time showing up at some place because you weren't aware that the schedule had changed. Or, believe it or not, I may have put the schedule in incorrectly. Maybe I got some bad information, or maybe I typed in the wrong date or something. So this is just your way to sort of double check that everything's lined up and okay. All right, most important part maybe for some of you, let's talk about pay, right? I want, like, for my high school wrestlers that officiate, I want you to make a lot of money. That's why I don't have like 1,000 people going through this training. I limit it down to the number. Basically, what I'm trying to do is I want you to work every single day we have a middle school event in your area that you live or go to school in, okay? Because I want you to make a lot of money. Now, I've got the middle school rates highlighted here. This table also includes sort of the high school varsity and JV stuff as well. So, if you're sitting there staring at the screen, you can see that the fees for the high school level stuff a lot more attractive, right? But at the entry level for middle school and kids stuff, for dual meets, it's a flat fee, and you get a game fee. The contest fee is $39.15. So a dual meet, most middle schools have like 18 weight classes, minute and a half rounds. So if a match goes to all 3 rounds, it's 4.5 minutes, but you get paid $39.15 for the dual meet. Then every event you get assigned to, there's a little assigner fee, 6%, that comes back to the PNWA basically to fund what I have to do as your scheduler. Okay. So you net on a middle school dual meet, you'll net $36.80. Okay. So, and on top of that, you get a travel fee. So I'll talk about the travel fee in a moment. So, the travel fee doesn't have anything deducted from it. It's to compensate you for your travel to the and from the school. And then those exhibition fees I have there, once you finish the dual meet, you raise the hand of the heavyweight wrestler, and then the coaches go, okay, now we got some extra matches, right? So our JV kids or our sixth graders or whatever, and they start sending matches out to you. Every time they send one to you, $2.25 you're earning. Okay, so send two sixth grade kids out there, and it's a 10-second pin. Cha-ching, $2.25 more it's going to get paid to you. Okay. So in some cases, like literally in some of these middle school leagues we have, I've had kids who actually make more in game fees off the exhibition matches than they did from the dual meet. Like literally, I've had kids that get like 20 to 22 like exhibition matches after the dual meet, and for the afternoon they're walking away with about $100. So it's a pretty good deal, especially if you're a high schooler, right? Like if you've ever worked a minimum wage job, or you have friends that work minimum wage jobs at places like Dairy Queen or Burger King or something like that, they're lucky to get paid like 10 to 12 bucks an hour. But if you work a middle school tournament, you can see the hourly rate that we pay is $18.50 an hour. And then if you take out the assigner fee, it nets out to $17.38 an hour that you're going to get paid to officiate wrestling. And if you love the sport of wrestling, you're again doing something you enjoy, and you're getting paid pretty good money for it. A lot more money than you'd get paid working at a restaurant at your age. So the money is good, and again, I want you to optimize how much money you make. Like I said, the travel fee is $18 a day. That's a flat rate. So if I send you to a school that is like 3 blocks from your house, you're going to get paid 18 bucks. If I send you to a school that's, 20 miles from your house, you're still only going to get 18 bucks. Now, that's why I sort of ask you where you want to be working in terms of which league, which school districts, because I'm trying to send you to the places that are, pretty close to where you already are. Traffic can be an issue in our area around Seattle, so I try to keep people as close as I can to where they work or go to school or live. So you'll get the $18 travel fee on top. So as an example, if I assign you to do a middle school dual meet and you're netting $36.80 for the dual meet, you'll get the $18 travel fee on top of that. That brings you to $54.80. So basically you're going to net 55 bucks to do a middle school dual meet, which is going to take all of about 2 hours out of your afternoon, right? You might show up at the school at 3:45 and by like 5:30 you're probably done. So at 55 bucks for less than 2 hours of work, wow, that's making pretty good money. And again, doing something you kind of enjoy anyway. Now, when you do work exhibitions, I need you to report to me after the event's over, either right after or when you get home that evening. Tell me how many exhibition matches you worked, and then I can add that to the fees that you're going to get for that event. Okay. If you wait around and don't tell me after a couple of days, it's too late. I will have billed the school. You won't get the extra money. Okay. So make sure you email me, text me, or call me as soon as your event's over or that same evening. Like, hey, Bob, I was at Leota Middle School. I did the varsity dual meet and I had 6 exhibitions. Great. 6 times 225. There you go. You're going to get an extra, 1350 or whatever that is. Okay. Now, if you're on a tournament crew, your head official is responsible for this, so none of you will have to do this, but they will report how many hours you worked, and then I'll calculate it based off of the hourly rate times the number of hours. That's how much you'll get in contest fees, plus you'll get your $18 travel fee on top of that. Now, in a tournament, the clock officially starts at the time that the wrestling is scheduled to begin. So if the tournament is scheduled to start at 10 a.m., that's when the clock starts and that's when your hourly rate begins. You're not getting paid for if you show up at 9:30 and your head official is just going over some procedures with you, like you're not getting paid for 9:30 to 10. But once 10 o'clock arrives, if that's the start time, boom, the clock's on, you're getting paid. So and this happens sometimes, you're there at 10, it's supposed to have started, but it hasn't. There's something wrong with the brackets, trouble with the computer system, they don't have all the tables set up, whatever it is, and they don't start wrestling until 10:45. Well, guess what? You just got paid for that 45 minutes. You got paid $17.38 to sit around for 45 minutes. So the hourly rate is an incentive for the schools to be more efficient and to make good use of the time and not just drag things out needlessly, because if the officials are sitting around doing nothing, they're paying for them. Now, the clock ends or stops when the very last match of the tournament concludes. So normally, like in a high school tournament, the 285-pound weight class is the final weight class. As soon as that match ends, we raise the hand of the winner, go over and sign the bout sheet. Boom, tournament's over, clock stops for everyone. Okay, so that's how it works for tournament pay. But your head official will let me know, yes, Bob, we started it was scheduled to start at 10, we finished up at 4:30. Great, now I know it was 6.5 hours of time, and I can do the calculation, and 6.5 hours times your hourly rate plus your $18 fee, there you go. If the school wants to cancel an event, they are required to cancel it more than 5 hours prior to the start of the event. So let's say for a middle school dual meet like you might have, it starts at 3:30 perhaps. That means they have to cancel that. If they're going to cancel it, they have to cancel it no later than 10:30 a.m. If they cancel any later than that, they're going to get charged the full dual meet fee, and you're going to get paid for that. So they need to notify me uh, in advance, or if you've contacted the school, let's say you call them the afternoon before your dual meet, like you're going to work on March 6th, you call them on afternoon March 5th, and they say, oh yeah, no, we're canceling that. The other team has an outbreak of flu, and coaches decided to cancel it. All right, you don't get paid anything for that, and they don't get charged anything. But if they call me at noon for that 3:30 start time and say, "Oh, you know what, Bob? Did my coach reach out to you?" And I say, "No, what's going on?" "Oh, yeah. We can't wrestle today because the other team had, an outbreak of flu, and they don't have enough wrestlers." I'm gonna just let them know. Okay, I'll let the official know, but you're still getting charged for the full dual meet fee on this because you canceled within 5 hours of the start of the dual meet. Okay, so that's how that works. And then lastly, you'll get your paycheck at the end of the season. So the season will end. The very last middle school league tournaments are usually at the end of March, or maybe on the very, very early April. So we have a banquet for our association to get our paychecks for both the high school season and now the spring middle school season as well, usually in late April. That's what gives me time. I have to go bill all of these schools. So those 100 schools that I talked about, I have to send bills to them and collect from them so that then I can cover the checks that I write to you for the earnings you've gotten. So the paychecks will come after all the season ends. And like I said, any of the stuff that's, sort of expenses to you, like dues or whatever to the WA, you don't pay anything out of pocket. I just deduct that from your paycheck that you'll get in April, okay? All right, so let's talk about the uniform requirements here if you're going to officiate. First is the gray pinstripe shirt. This is the standard. We don't use the black and white stripes anymore. That's old school. That went away about 4 or 5 years ago. The shirt itself, it comes in sort of two versions. One is a plain, what's pictured here is what we call the sublimated shirt. See how it has a little patch on the left breast and patches on the arms of the uniform. Those are sublimated, sort of like your wrestling uniform. Might have a picture of a lion or the big letter R on the side of your uniform or something, it's not an actual patch, it's sort of in the fabric. That's what the sublimated shirt is, $41. When you officiate high school events in the state of Washington, you're required to have the sublimated shirt that has the WOA patch on the left breast and the American flag on the left sleeve, etc. But when you officiate at the middle school or the kids level, you're not required to have that sublimated shirt. So you can also buy the shirt just plain without any patches on it, and that's about $22 for the plain shirt. So depending on whether or not you're close to, let's see, either graduating from high school or if you're an adult who's joining the training here, if you're close to being able to officiate at the high school level for us, then I would recommend invest in the $41 sublimated shirt, and you'll be ready to go for the next upcoming high school season. If you're not close to that because you're still in high school, you're a sophomore, something like that, and you're not sure you're going to officiate here in the state of Washington beyond high school or join us for the high school season, if you're an adult, then fine. If you want to save the money, you can just invest in the $22 plain shirt. And I'll send out links to where you can order this equipment. You have to wear black pants, and if your pants have a belt, it has to be a black belt. The pants, I would recommend that you get polyester. If you don't have a polyester pants, you already have black denim or something, that's fine. You can wear those. I'm just saying that if you have to buy pants, buy the polyester. They're very durable. Denim, cotton, those things, they wear out. And in the sport of wrestling, when you officiate, you're getting up and down off the mat a lot. You're on your knees, you're crawling around on your belly. Sometimes, like denim, like the knees will wear down, and your black pants will have like white streaks or where your knees are, where you've been on your knees a lot, like that'll turn white. It'll look horrible. But if you buy polyester pants, those things, they don't ever wear out that way. Like I'm wearing a pair of pants. I have two pairs of pants that I've been using for like 12 years. They still look almost brand new. Okay. And you can get the pants. You don't have to buy the pants from the supplier. I'll point you to get your shirt and other gear. But you can go to some place like Walmart, Ross, maybe Costco, TJ Maxx, and get pants like that for maybe like 15 bucks or so. So you can save yourself some money there if you have to go buy some pants. But again, buy some nice polyester pants if you're going to do that, okay? Socks, black socks. Gotta wear black socks. Don't wear white. Don't, nothing but black. By rule, the uniform says black shoes, but for those of you that are still in high school, I don't require you to invest in, buying a pair of black shoes if you don't have any already. Feel free to wear your wrestling shoes if you want, okay? That's fine with me, and everybody understands that. But if you're officiating other than the spring, then I recommend to people to buy nice pair of shoes because wrestling shoes have like no arch support, no padding, and when you're officiating for a long time, let's say a triple duel or an all-day tournament, your feet will get awful tired if you don't have a nice pair of like athletic shoes or something on your feet. Okay. Black whistle and black lanyard. The lanyard that's pictured there is just sort of a regular, loops over the top of the head that you've seen traditionally. There's also have a thing called the Smitty lanyard, which is instead of going over the top of your head, it's just a single piece that hooks to the, that shirt you'll get, the gray pinstripe shirt. It'll have a little loop there in the V neck of the collar, and you can hook the little Smitty lanyard on there, and then the whistle's just sort of hanging in front of you down about a foot or so, and the whistle goes on the clip there. So it's always sort of right there for you. The whistle itself costs usually about $4 or $5 for a decent whistle, and the lanyard will cost you $1 or $2. The bands, you need green and red bands for NFHS events. If you do USA Wrestling, I know USA Wrestling, like the color scheme is blue and red, but for our high school and middle school events, green and red are the official colors. The bands will cost you about $5 as well. And then a disc, something to flip to decide choice to begin the second round. They have cool little discs like this that Cliff Keen produces that are already sort of, nice material, red on one side, green on the other. If you want to save money, just get like a quarter or something and get some red paint and paint one side of it red, the other side green, and just use a quarter if that's what you want to do. But anyway, you need to have some sort of disc. And then not necessary for middle school is like random draw kit. So the random draw is used primarily at the high school level to dictate what weight class weighs in first, and then that same weight class is the one that competes first, okay? So don't worry about that if all your officiating is middle school wrestling. Suppliers for this stuff, like I said, Sound Athletic Supply is a local supplier here in the Auburn Federal Way area. And then Cliff Keen is a national organization. So you can get that gear, you can order it online, they'll ship it to you. If you're here locally around Federal Way in Auburn and you want to pick it up, you can sort of save, I think it's about $7 they'll charge you for shipping. But if you, like I live not too far from that area, so I've been to that place to pick up my gear. And it's a little mom and pop place. They run it out of their house, so it's not like a big storefront with a neon sign on it. I had one of my officials that was looking to pick up their gear because they had to get it on short notice. Couldn't wait for them to ship it, and they were driving around. And they called me up and they go, "Where is this place at? Like I can't find the store anywhere. I'm in the middle of a neighborhood." And I had to tell them, "Yeah, the address I gave you, like it's a house. I got a red brick front, a driveway, like that's the actual store because the people run it out of their house." Okay. So anyway, those are the places you can get that, and I will send you an email with your homework as well as other information about certification and the uniform requirements in an email that you need to look at to help you get ready for training session number 2. And I'll have links to Southland Athletic Supply there, so you can easily order up your gear. All right, let's get down to the publications now. So remember, NFHS, National Federation of High Schools, they are the ones that print these publications, okay? So they've gone to a standard in the last few years of uh, the purple book is the rules book, and the other book they publish is a case manual and referee's manual, and it's always yellow. So that makes it easy. The publications are published yearly. So the rules book comes out every year, they'll publish it. The rules book is the Bible. It is the definitive source of rules for the sport. No other source supersedes that. Okay, so that's where we look, and that's the final place that we find our rules. Okay. Now, when you look in the book, in page 2 of the book, then you'll have a list of rule changes for that year. So if I take my purple book, the rules book, and I open first page inside the cover and then onto page 2, that's where I'll find the list of rule changes. So this year there were quite a few rule changes because there was a bunch of stuff that had to do with hair regulations and undergarments and uniform things, as well as changes to how they penalize stalling and technical violation for fleeing the mat, shoelaces. So there's a lot of rule changes. This just lists what rules changed. So this is the first page that experienced officials go to every time they get their books, because they want to see what's the new stuff. What do I need to learn? Okay. Then on page 3, next to that is a list of what they call points of emphasis. And again, both these do not explain fully what those things are. They're just sort of a reference. Say this is the changed rule, and this is a point of emphasis that we have. They just list them out for you. Okay. Back later in the book, and I'll point this out, there is full descriptions of what those rule changes are and what those points of emphasis are. The points of emphasis just represent the fact that we have thousands of people officiating the sport of wrestling across the nation. They usually are getting reports from the field about stuff that may indicate that there's some problems that are cropping up in places, or some inconsistencies they want to address with how officials are doing something in Oklahoma versus in Florida versus in Oregon or whatever. Like, the points of emphasis are just trying to call out certain things where they try to get us all back to sort of a one way of doing things, or to alert us that, look, they're having problems over here in New Jersey. They reported some kids were being disrespectful after the matches, and when they go over to shake the other coach's hand. Therefore, the point of emphasis, you do not require them to go shake hands with the opposing coach. If they don't want to, they're not required to, whatever. Like, that's what the points of emphasis tend to be about. Now, the next page over is the table of contents, okay? And the table of contents is, there are 11 primary rules in the sport of wrestling. And so the most important rule is actually Rule 5. That's our definition, so it's the most used. But this book is not organized like a story. So sometimes I'll get, approached by some parent after an event, and they'll come up to me and they'll go, "Where can I get a rule book?" Like, they're unhappy about some call I made, and they want to get a rule book so they can prove that Bob made the wrong call. And I'll kind of think about that to myself, and I'll tell them, "Look, I can get you a rule book, but it's not likely to sort of help you or tell you, show you what you're looking for, because the way this book is organized is not a story. It doesn't say Johnny and Jack get on the starting line to start the match. They shook hands. Bob blew the whistle. Johnny shot in on the left leg. Jack, cross-faced him too hard. Bob was an idiot. He didn't call a penalty for the hard cross-face. It's not written that way. These contents in here. Rule 1, competition. It just defines things or tells you about, what is a dual meet, what is a match, what is a tournament, okay? How many weight classes are there? Rule 2, equipment. It tells you how thick does the mat have to be, how big is the outer circle of the mat, the inner circle, how wide are the lines, how far away do the benches have to be from the edge of the mat. Like uh, Rule 7, infractions. That's the list of all the violations, and Rule 8 is where the penalties are described to each of those violations. So like it's not written in a narrative form. It's more like an encyclopedia or a law book. So that's why it's kind of complex to learn how to officiate the sport, because to understand these rules means you have to sort of put all these things sort of together that are sort of disparate pieces of information and apply them to the things you see, okay, when you're officiating. Now, if you turn the page to the, rule 1, which is competition, okay, the numbering convention for any rule, when we refer to a rule, we'll refer to it by rule number dash section number dash article number, okay? And so in the book, what you'll see is, rule number, right? Like the rule number up here, rule 1, okay, competition. And then these little black boxes you see, those are the section number. So section number 1 in this case, match. Section 2, dual meet. Section 3, tournament. And then underneath those, you'll see ART period 1, ART period 2. Those are the article numbers. So that's sort of the hierarchy: a rule, section, article. And then it can indent as far as like article 3A, B, C. And then even I've seen as far as article rule 6-5-6 3A1. So anyway, but when we refer to the rule in general, we'll just use rule number dash section number dash article number, okay? So if you have your rules book with you, then you can pick that up, and here's a question like, well, first yeah. So the question is like, what are the first 4 words of rule 5-17-2? So at this point, you can just pause the video if you have your rules book and go look that up, and then resume the video once you have the answer, okay? So now if you've gone and looked at that up and you've resumed this, what are the first 4 words of rule 5-17-2? Well, that says a match begins when. So that rule, the reason I use that rule is because I wrote that rule. It's the rule that defines when the match begins. And so that's why it's in the definitions, rule 5. But again, this is just an example of when we refer to a rule, that's how you go find it, okay? Now, in the book, starting this year on page 58, so I'm talking about the 2019-2020 rule book at this point, like page 58, that's where those points of emphasis I mentioned earlier appear. And now you can see like there's a lot of text, a lot of explanation here. And this year, for instance, points of emphasis include things about equipment or stalling, concussion evaluation. So again, these are things that are happening out there in the field across the country. They're just trying to draw our attention to make sure that we're all on top of that and handling it the right way. So on page 59, next to it there, that's when the rule changes start to appear. And just like with the points of emphasis, now you can see that these rule changes, like there's little paragraphs that explain what's the rule change about, why did they do that, what does it mean, okay? And then starting on page 62 through page 81, this is where they have pictures, okay? And so these pictures also, when you look below them, like here on picture number 2, in parentheses, it says 4-2-1. So that reference in the parentheses is the rule number. So back again to up there at the top part of the slide, right? The convention is rule number dash section number dash article number. So rule 4-2-1 is a rule in the talks about the hair requirements or whatever. So they're giving you pictures here for some of these rules to give you a specific illustration of that rule, so that, again, we're dealing with so many different people officiating. We just want to make sure everybody has a clear example of something to go, oh, that's what you mean that the hair can't be below the eyebrows or touching the collar or whatever. So, in the picture two, they're just showing a wrestler whose hair meets the hair requirement, okay? But there are other pictures as you go through the rule book that show you, like, oh, here's why this headlock is illegal, because he doesn't have an arm, encircled above the elbow, okay? And then pages 82 and 83, I'm just going to briefly just point those out. Like, these aren't essential for you to, like, or these are, like, 82 and 83 are actually I misspoke there. 82 and 83 are the NFHS signal chart, okay? So that signal chart, these are the official signals for the sport of wrestling, okay? And what I want to tell you is I want you to study these, and I want you to learn them, and I want you to learn them this way. There's no reason for people to be using signals that aren't in this chart. And the reason is, if you don't use the signals in this chart, you risk confusing people at the scores table, in the stands, in the corner, or on the bench that are coaching. So when someone scores a touchdown in football, what's the signal? Like, we all know this because we watch football on TV or we've played football, right? Like, touchdown, okay? They don't go touchdown or some stupid, goofy, personalized thing like that. They have an official signal, they use it. And the reason is because we should all understand exactly what the referee's signaling or calling. So learn these. You can practice these in the mirror. If you learn them the right way, then you'll never have to unlearn some bad habit you learned for, using a signal. So for instance, like, this is the signal for an escape. One, escape, arm up over the head with a single finger, right? And then if you want to say neutral, then it's like this, the two hands facing each other, sort of like that, like the touchdown signal in football, basically. This is not a signal. One, escape, right? Or this isn't the neutral signal, like this, with the palms, they're facing each other, not facing you. So anyway, you see sometimes officials using their own signals, and that's just opening the door for confusion. So learn these signals and practice them in the mirror, and then you'll develop the right habit. Page 88 and 89 is what I was mentioning, which is, these aren't essential for what you're about to do, but I just want to call to your attention, there's a code of ethics for coaches and a code of ethics for officials in the NFHS publication here, because they have expectations for us in our role and for the coach in their role. So, for instance, by the NFHS Coaches Code of Ethics, the coach is expected to master the contest rules, meaning the coach is not assumed to be ignorant of what the rule book says. And that can be meaningful, because that's why we don't just let coaches, question what the official's calling in the middle of a match and interrupting matches all the time. Why did you call that? Why is that a takedown? How come that kid got stalling or whatever? It's like, coach, you're expected to master the contest rules. Like, you should already know this. That's why we don't have a facility to say, yeah, you can call a conference anytime you want and interrupt things because I need to go explain rules to you. No, you are expected to already know this stuff. And that's why you might get penalized for interrupting matches to have conferences, because since you're supposed to know this already, yet you still interrupt the match just so I can tell you that I've applied the rule correctly, that's why there's a consequence, okay? So I just point that out because the sport is designed a certain way, and we're expected, certain things are expected of us already, and this code of ethics sort of explains some of that stuff. So last point here is that a competent official must know what's in the rules book, okay? And again, for this particular training, I'm not training you to be experts so that you're ready to do the state tournament when we're finished training. I just need you to be able to act competently, sufficiently to do this lower level of wrestling, which is middle school wrestling, and do it in a good and safe manner, okay? All right, let's talk about the NFHS casebook and referees manual, okay? This again is the yellow book. So rules book purple, case book yellow. That's the convention they use. That makes it easy. You know, prior to about 4 years ago, they used to change the color of both these books every year. Like the rules book might be green one year and then it's blue the next and then yellow. Like, and it was confusing. Now it's nice that it's always purple for rules and always yellow for the case book. This thing's published annually as well. So it's the companion to the rules book. Now, what this book is divided into two things. The first section, pages 4 through 70, is what's called the case book. And what the case book is, it's a series of examples of rules being applied into specific situations, okay? So in here, they'll describe like a situation, and then you have the opportunity to, before you look at what the ruling is, they'll list the ruling below it, but you have the opportunity to say to yourself, okay, so if wrestler A takes a swing at wrestler B after the final buzzer sounded to end the third period, what should you do? Like, and then you have a chance to say, oh, well, took a swing at him. Boy, that's, if he tried to punch him right in the jaw with all of his force, like that's flagrant misconduct. But because the third period had already ended and the match is over, the flagrant misconduct didn't happen during the match. So he won the match, but for whatever reason, he was so upset and he took a swing at that kid. Like he won the match, but now that the match is over, he commits flagrant misconduct. Therefore, the proper ruling is that, well, the match is over, but he is ejected. His team loses 3 team points. And by the way, his team doesn't get the points for his victory now. But his opponent does not awarded the match because the match was over. So there is no winner. And the kid that got kicked out lost not only the points his team would have gotten for his victory, but they are also losing 3 team points. So the ruling will tell you things like that, right? So it's just specific situations, and then I try and illustrate how do you apply the rules in that specific situation, okay? So that's a good way for you to gauge sort of your knowledge of rules or test yourself. Now, pages 71 through 95 in this year's book, that's what they call the referee's manual. And in the referee's manual, this is just a set of recommended mechanics and standardization. So again, there's thousands of officials across the country, right? And what we're trying to do with the referee's manual is the NFHS is trying to say, look, we don't want them to operate significantly differently in Pennsylvania than they do down in California or in Texas, okay? When you travel from one state to the next, it should look kind of the same. And this referee's manual, it's not rule, it's not the same as what's in the rules book that says you must comply with this, but it is the set of recommendations and standard practices, okay? Now, when it comes to the case book, so back to the pages 4 through 70, like the case book, the numbering convention of a case situation is the rule number dot section number dot article number. So the rule itself, the standard, remember, rule number dash section number dash article number. But when we use talking about a case situation, rule number dot section number dot article number. So when you see the case situation, like I've got this right now on this page here, okay? So when I look at situation 6.2.2, situation A, that means this situation is dealing with rule 6-2-2. So when I read that situation, what it's really sort of testing or illustrating is how to apply rule 6-2-2 into that specific situation, okay? That way, if you want to go look up after you try the case situation and look at the ruling, you want to go look at the actual rule, you can open this up and go, okay, great, I'm going to go find rule 6-2-2 and see exactly what it says, and then try to make sure I understand why they told me in the ruling what they told me. So here's another place where if you've got your case book, you'll want to pause the video after I ask the question, right? Like look up situation 1.4.6, situation B, and then tell me what's the ruling for that situation. And again, read the situation first. Don't look at the ruling, sort of cover that up like it says ruling, like right there, right? So cover that part up when you get to that particular situation. Just read the situation and then see if you can answer what the ruling should be. So go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, so now that you're back, obviously you've looked this up. And so what's the ruling in this case? Well, uh, in this particular situation, if the wrestler weighs more than 195.0 pounds, that means they're qualified to be wrestling at both the 220-pound weight class and the 285-pound weight class. Okay, so that's again just an illustration of the rule that deals with competition, which defines the weight classes and tells you that by rule you can only wrestle at the weight your weight qualifies you for plus one weight class higher. Okay. All right. The case book has almost the power of the rules book, okay? But not quite. The rules book is the higher authority because, again, this case manual or this case book is talking about one specific situation at a time. So that doesn't mean it covers 100% of the situations, and it doesn't mean it covers 100% of the rule itself. So that's why it's close. For a specific situation, yes, it has the power, same authority as the rules book because it's applying this rules book into a specific situation. But the problem is if somebody says, hey, this case says this, and you might say to that person, look, yeah, I know that's what the case book says, but this situation wasn't exactly that case that you're describing here. Okay. So that's why it's close to the same authority, but not quite. Okay. Now, like I said, the referee's manual back here in the back, it contains a lot of recommendations and tips. And a lot of that stuff aligns with, supporting how you should run the match according to the rules. But it is not the rule. So just because the referee's manual in this case says that, to signal points, you should first put up the number of points, 2, and then make the signal for whatever it is, in this case a reversal, and then put the points up again too. Like it says to do that. You're not required by rule to do that. Like if you don't do it that way, it's okay. And sometimes there's a reason not to do it that way because, like in my example, this has happened frequently in my career, especially at the middle school level. I'm dealing with some 6th grade kid sitting at the table who's keeping the scorebook, and I go, if I went 2 reversal green, then later on I find out that the kid wrote 2, and 2 more. So they give the one kid 4 points in a situation where no, it's just 2 for a reversal. Okay. So anyway, the referee's manual has those tips, but it's not, it's not quite scripture. It's just some recommendations. Okay. So the thing about the casebook is use these situations in here to validate your knowledge or to challenge your knowledge about what the sport of wrestling and the rules. Okay. So what I would recommend is take this before you sort of do all of your training or before you do your test. Like as soon as you get this in your hand, before you do any studying, just open it up, crack it open, and spend about 5 minutes sort of going from one part of the case book to another, various rules or situations. Like test yourself, just see how much you know. What it'll reveal to you is, like I said at the beginning, sort of that 20% of the sport you don't necessarily know. You'll probably find yourself going, oh, I didn't know that that's how that should be. Oh, okay. Like those are those nuances that you might not know because you only know the sport as a competitor or as a spectator. Okay. All right. So let me share with you a few principles of officiating that I want to emphasize. First one, you are a servant. It's not about you, okay? People aren't there to watch you officiate. They're there to watch people compete in wrestling. So that's why we don't need to have like really flamboyant pin calls, or we don't need to, like this happened when I was at a regional tournament about 20 years ago. I really was uncomfortable. Like this official, like he got mad at the kid because the kid was stalling, and instead of just saying, "Well, stalling green," he had to, "Hey, stalling!" He's getting in the kid's face and yelling at him. Like, so don't make it about you. You're there as a servant, and I know it can be difficult because you're sort of maybe being, helped a lot, criticized by people like coaches, spectators, etc. You might get defensive, but it's not about you. You're there to serve the sport. I want you to enter into this the right way, okay? Second thing, you got to know the rules and apply them consistently. And I really want to, in the case of spring apprentices, I want to emphasize apply consistently as sort of like your first goal around that. You're again with their abbreviated training. I'm not going over these rules in detail in these training sessions. You have to study that on your own. But again, I don't expect you to be expert and know all of them. So there's a handful that I do focus on in our training that we'll sort of get into, and in your homework before the next session, I've got some videos that concentrate on the most important rules I want to emphasize, which deal with scoring, things like takedowns, escapes, reversals, etc. So you don't need to know every single rule with complete fluidity, but what I want you to do is just make sure that you apply rules consistently. So if you're a little slow, especially with middle school kids less experienced, like you're a little slow to award control and give them that reversal or takedown, like be slow with all of them, okay? Don't be slow on these 5 situations and then suddenly be too quick on the 6th one, because that's when coaches and wrestlers and spectators will start to maybe take exception with what you're doing because now you're not being consistent, okay? Third thing, you have to see it to call it. Like, if you don't see something, you can't call it. There's plenty of times when I'm officiating that I know that kid's pinned. I know he is, but I can't see his shoulders, so I can't count the 2 seconds and I can't call the fall because like his opponent's got a reverse half and his arms on the mat like that, like, and I can't see through his arm and I can't see the guy's shoulders. And meanwhile, on the other side of the bodies, they may have a clearer view for all I know, and they're, oh, he's pinned, he's pinned. Oh my gosh, he's pinned. But I can't see it. Unless I see it, I can't call it. So better that you miss a call that because you didn't see it than to make something up and make a call that you shouldn't make, okay? Fourth thing, I want you to get it right, okay? Even if it means you did something wrong. So, like, I was doing a regional tournament one year and doing the consolation semifinal, which is the most important bout of the tournament for individual kids because winners going to state, losers out, not going to state. Okay, so I've got red and green are in a 1 point match. Red's ahead by 1. They're on their feet. They're inside of 30 seconds. I don't know exactly how much time is left because I'm not staring at the clock, but I'm lucky I have an assistant official on the mat. So it's one of that 2% of time when I'm not having to operate alone. But I'm blowing the whistle and I'm making the calls in the match, and he's my assistant. So um, green is behind by a point. Green gets around behind red while they're still on their feet. Now we're getting close to the end of the match. Like I don't know, but I know we're getting within probably 10 to 15 seconds towards the end of the match. And green is trying to bring red down to get that takedown down on the mat, and he can't trip him down. And he's tried like 2 or 3 times, and finally he kind of does it, and red sort of temporarily puts his hand down, but pops right back up, and I hit it with 2 green takedown, and then they go out of bounds, and there's like 3 seconds left, and I look at my assistant and realize, oh, I have my assistant there. I say, Steve, you got 2 points there too, and he goes, no. I said, oh. He says, yeah. He says, Bob, like he wasn't down beyond reaction time, like I wouldn't have awarded the takedown there. And I thought about it for a moment, and I realized he's right. Like that was too quick. And so what do I do, right? Like this is the difference between going to state and not going to state. There's 3 seconds left on the clock. There's probably no way this kid's gonna get a takedown if I say no takedown. But Steve, my assistant's right. Like no takedown, take the 2 points off the board. Ah, yelling and moaning and crying from the sidelines. But I'm sorry, like that was the right call. So yeah, did it make me look good? Not necessarily, like I shouldn't have called that so quickly, but in the end, when you make the right call, people will respect that if they see you correct their mistake. If they see you failing to correct something that you should know is an error, because again, if you're not if you're making it about you and you're worried about your ego and okay, I'm just going to not overturn my own call, like they won't respect that. So look to get it right, even if you have to admit you got it wrong. And then the last thing is just use your common sense and discretion. See how thick this rules book is? It's not very thick. Like, but you know what? There's over 71 trillion situations that they mathematically determined. Actually, I don't know, but there are lots of situations, and they aren't all necessarily covered in here. So there's a lot of what I call white space in the rules. So um, you're going to run into situations that there isn't a specific sort of clear-cut way to apply the rules into. So just use your common sense. Like I was officiating at a tournament once, and we're in the middle of wrestling action, and the lights went out. So suddenly it's like dark in the gym, and the one guy was just about to finish it. Some sort of he's got the guy in jeopardy. He's about to turn him into near fall, and now it's dark, and what is common sense? I blew the whistle. Like you know what? I can't see. They can't see from the corner, or whatever. They can't see at the table. Like I have to stop action. Well, what about the near fall? No near fall. Like he hadn't earned any yet. Like I just have to use my common sense. But there was no rule that said, oh yeah, when the lights go out, here's what you do. So trust your common sense. And if you don't know what to do, even if there is a rule, if you don't remember it, like if use your common sense, you'll probably make the right call. Okay. So we've done big picture stuff. Let's get down to some narrower specific stuff. Talk about the inbounds rule. Rule 5-15-1 in your rules book is what defines both the concept of supporting points and the inbounds rule. And here's what it tells us. To be in bounds, there have to be 2 supporting points in bounds. It can either be 2 from one wrestler or 1 supporting point from each. So, for instance, when you're on your feet, you're standing up, your feet are your supporting points. So, if me and my opponent are on our feet, and my opponent's standing out of bounds, but I'm standing in bounds on both my feet, well, I have 2 supporting points in. Therefore, 2 of mine and all of his are out. We're still in bounds. Or let's say we're straddling the line now, where my left foot's in and my right foot's out, and his right foot is in and his left foot is out. Again, 1 supporting point from each of us is in bounds, then that means we're in. So, and rule 5-15-3, which is in the same rule, but it's Article 3, it just reinforces that again, wrestling now continues as long as we're fulfilling the inbounds rule in Article 1 there. And so what I want you to distinguish between is the concept of a body part or a supporting point being inbounds versus the situation being inbounds. And let me illustrate. So the boundary line is the 28-foot circle, right? That defines the wrestling area. So the out of bounds begins beyond the outer edge of the boundary line. Like in the sport of wrestling, the entire line is in bounds. Okay. And then beyond the outer edge of the boundary line, so on the outer edge of the white line there, that's when the out of bounds area starts. So that red paint or painted surface beyond the outer edge, that's the out of bounds. And from the outer edge inward toward the center, all of that's inbounds, okay? So let's illustrate. Tell me if this body part is considered in or out. So we'll start with situation 1 here. Is that foot in bounds or out of bounds? And why? It's in. Why? Because the entire body part is inside of the outer edge of the boundary line, okay? How about for that foot, number 2? And why? That foot is actually out because part of the foot is beyond the outer edge of the boundary line there, right? It's touching the painted area beyond the white line. Now, this is the principle. If any part of the body part is touching the out of bounds area, that whole body part's out. So that whole foot's out. Even if even if more than half of the foot's inbounds, it's still out if some of it's touching beyond the boundary line, okay? All right, number 3, in or out. This one is in. Again, it's on, the toes are on that boundary line, but remember the entire line is in and nothing's gone beyond the outer edge of the boundary line, so that foot is considered in. And now the last one. Number 4, that foot in or out. It's out, because see that little sliver of the big toe is touching just beyond the outer edge of the boundary line. That means the whole foot's out. So that one little millimeter of toe touching out of bounds means the entire foot's out now. So that's the principle. I just want to illustrate sort of the examples for you there. Now let's talk about signaling points. This is a mechanic. We'll get into more of this in session 2, but I wanted to illustrate this real quick here. When we signal, the first thing I want you to do is signal whatever the thing is. In this case, it's for a near fall. So we're touching the shoulder and we're verbalizing. 3, near fall, green. Okay, we want to verbalize loudly and we want to make our signals very clear when we do this. And then we're sticking that hand up, okay? Up above the shoulder, right? Nice and high so people can see it, okay? And we're going to hold it in one direction for 2 seconds. Then we're going to rotate it 90 degrees and stop and hold that there in that position for 2 seconds. And you know why we do this? You see what's happened here in the illustration? Like the first time in picture number 2 there, is that 1 finger, 2 fingers, or 3? You can't really see very clearly, can you? And if you're keeping score at the table or you're a spectator and you can't hear me, like at the Tacoma Dome at the state tournament, people can't even hear the wrestler can't even hear their coach in the corner, much less the guy at the table hearing me saying something from the mat because the venue's so loud. Like when I turn that thing the 90 degrees, that's when he can now see, oh, that's 3 fingers, right? So holding that for another 2 seconds in that direction. Then the last thing I do is I want you to do what I call take it around the world. So before you drop your hand, so we're holding that thing and we're just going to take it 180 degrees around our body. Boom, boom, then drop. And we're doing that because that gives everybody one last chance, depending on what where you're situated on that mat or in the stands. Like gives you one last chance to see those fingers at whatever angle you're at, okay? And we do this to match up with how the scoring is recorded on a score sheet. So we do N3, right? And that's how it gets recorded on the score sheet. So remember, be clear with your signals so the scorekeeper, the coaches and spectators, etc., all have a reasonable chance to see the signals, okay? Again, we're trying to be clear so that they can see that, and especially the people at the table keeping the score sheet, because that's the official record. We don't want them to be confused. All right, and then the last thing I want to cover with you is just when you arrive, on site to do your event, there's a few things I want to call to your attention. First of all, just set a good tone throughout. Like I said, don't be goofing around or cutting up or something. Your jurisdiction begins the moment you arrive. Like when you walk out of your car in the parking lot, you're on duty. So I want you to be in uniform when you arrive to the site. That just makes sure everybody knows the referee's here. Because if you had to rule on something, let's say in the parking lot, as an example, using tobacco products is a flagrant misconduct. So if I caught some coach out there smoking a cigar or some kid, doing tobacco chew in the parking lot, boom, I can penalize him right there. So I want you to be in uniform so nobody's surprised. If I was dressed like this and I show up and I go, hey, you're out of the event for the night, you go, who are you? So be in your uniform so they know who you are. When you get into the gym, introduce yourself to the home coach. So find out, oh, who's the coach? Oh, he's the coach. Okay, hi, coach. I'm Bob Turner. I'm here to your official for today. And then get a status from the coach on what's going on, because sometimes they may say, oh, yeah, the other team, Meeker Middle School, they called, they're having bus trouble, they're going to be 20 minutes late. Okay, great. Now we'll just adjust it accordingly. In terms of pre-meet stuff, when it comes to middle school, like I said, you're only going to show up 15 minutes before wrestling starts, so your pre-meet's going to be pretty quick with them. Here's all I want you to do. I want you to just make sure you're trying to avoid what I call in-match problems. So you're going to identify things or set some expectations before we get started. So just ask the coach, like, hey, coach, can you have your wrestlers line up over here? Take the warm-up tops off, drop the straps. Coach, you do the same thing with your team over here. And then you're just going to go down the line real quick, check their nails, grooming, like uniform stuff, right? Like just you're going to catch, oh, hey, that knee brace, it's got metal on it, needs to be padded or whatever. Like just, oh, you have braces, make sure you have a mouth guard. Oh, I have one. Okay, great. So you just want to catch that stuff. Let's do a quick check of them, right? And then in terms of the other parts of your pre-meet for facilities and supporting people, your goal here is just make sure that the environment's ready for the competition, okay? You don't want any problems, again, to rise up in the middle of the match. So we're going to check beforehand. So just look around and look to see, is there anything sort of unsafe or out of order here? When it comes to the mat, look to see that there's not some gaps or between the mats, like the tape job is too loose, or like puckers in the mat, like air pockets or something, causing waves in the mat. Make sure it has the proper markings, does it have start lines, etc. And then if let's say the mat's pushed up against like a wall or the bleachers or something, because a lot of these middle schools, especially if they have two mats down, it gets kind of tight. Like you just want to do whatever you can to mitigate any risks. Like, hey, can we put some padding on those rolled up bleachers in case anybody goes out of bounds and is tumbling, that they don't get hurt or whatever. Like just take a look around, make sure that stuff's mitigated if possible. Team benches here, they're supposed to be 10 feet from the mat, but like I said, with some of the middle school facilities, it might be small. Sometimes the chairs or the benches are right up against the edge of the mat, and there's nothing you can do about that. But if you can, just have them fix that. Hey, guys, sometimes I'll step it off when there's room, and maybe the chairs are like 5 feet from the mat. I step off 10 feet, and I'll grab a chair and put it there and say, 10 feet away, and say, hey, guys, yeah, can line up the rest of the chairs with this one, okay? So. And then miscellaneous stuff, just make sure there's a garbage can nearby in case somebody's tape falls off, or if they had a bloody nose and there was cotton in there and it fell out, like there's a place to throw that stuff away nearby the mat, as well as find out where's the blood station at this place, so that, again, you're not waiting until the match before we figure out that there's, no blood station. And then when it comes to medical personnel, just find out from the coach, like, do you have someone that's a designated medical person here, designated healthcare professional? If they do, great. Who is it, coach? Go find that person. And if they have one, confirm with them, are you certified in concussion management? If they are, great. If they're not, or they don't have a designated healthcare professional, then just inform the coaches, like, hey, there's nobody here to clear anyone from concussion. So coaches, if I see signs of a concussion, the match is over. And that way they'll know, okay? And then this applies mostly to high school, but it's a good idea to find out who's in charge of the facility, who's in charge of the gym or the site, because you just want to make sure to meet them as well, so you can tell them, look, I'm officiating the match, but like if there's an emergency, like I turn over control to you. If there's an earthquake, a fire alarm, something like that, I don't want people to think I should tell them where they should go and what they should do just because I'm blowing a whistle and running a wrestling match. And then let that person also know if I have to eject somebody, like you need to do that. I'll just point to them and say that dad needs to go. We'll resume wrestling once you've removed him from the gym, and then just let them do their job. It's not up to you to go up to that dad and go, "Hey, you, let's go." Grab him by the collar or something. That's not your job. Like you'll just point to them and say, "Hey, I need that person removed." And again, I'll start the action again once that person's been ejected. So that's just a couple of quick things you do in that 15 minutes that you've been given prior to the start of wrestling. So that's the end of session one. Like I said, I will send an email with homework for you to do prior to session two. It's got about 45 minutes of videos that, again, focus on certain key rules that I want to get you trained up on. In session two, what we'll focus on is just a little more discussion about those rules that you see in the training video, and then we'll focus on the mat mechanics. Okay, so we're going to do some hands-on stuff. So in session two, bring your armbands, bring your whistle, bring your disc. Okay, because I'm going to run you through some paces. Okay. Also in that email, like I said, there will be steps that tell you how to get into Arbiter and do your WOA certification requirements. And again, this year, I need you to get those done by February 19th. If it's not the year 2020 and you're watching this video, it'll be in the email to tell you when I need you to get those certification requirements knocked out, okay? And then lastly, it'll also include the links for where you can order your refereeing gear, okay? So thanks for spending the time, and I look forward to seeing you at session number 2.